Hello everybody. Today we are going to have a special lecture for the sign language series, and I'm going to be accompanied by Manisha Sharma to help me transcribe what I have to tell today. The topic of today is International Day of the Girl Child. Why are we celebrating it now? Because this is actually follows from a decision by the United Nations General Assembly to declare the International Day of the Girl Child on this particular day, and it is celebrated everywhere on October 11th, and there are various kinds of programs, lectures to disseminate ideas about what are the specific problems which inflict the girl child. Now, there is a lot of discussion on how do we define the girl child? Who is the girl child? The question that arises is there a need to define? Why do we have to define the girl child? When we see a little girl, is it not obvious that she is a girl child? In a certain sense, indeed, if you see a little girl, you know she is a little girl. But beyond that, there are other issues which we need to discuss with on this particular topic, and this is also related to the distinction or difference between common sense knowledge and social knowledge seriously. Common sense knowledge and social science knowledge seriously. I have spoken about this earlier, and I am sharing with you the links of CEC on which this topic has been addressed. But right now, let us follow this discussion why the issue of defining the girl child is a problem. Who is a child? Now, there are legal definitions, and that is why I mean it cannot be understood by common sense or lay understanding. The convention says of the UN that a child means every human being below the age of 18 years unless the law applicable to the child majority is attained earlier. So, you have 18 years unless there are certain kind of exceptions in the UN definition. But in India, we have had different kinds of definitions regarding who is a child, and this difference pertains to the various laws which are there. Labor laws are different in different sectors, and therefore the kind of code of conduct which has to be adopted also differs depending upon how the child is defined. Now, for example, people who are fighting for child rights, they say that everybody who is below a particular age should be defined, and it should not be defined differently in different industries or different sectors. Now, I'll give you 2 or 3 examples to show you what the difference is. So, in the Plantation Labour Act 1951, plantation like tea plantations or coffee plantation or rubber plantation, very often there is a definition for child, adolescent and adult. 3 definitions, one for child, one for adolescent and one for adult. And according to this definition, child means a person who has not completed his 14th year. Now, you can clearly see UN definition 18 years, but here in the Plantation Labour Act it is 14 years. So, you have a kind of contradiction which is happening. Adolescent would then refer to people between 14 and 18 years. So, there have been people who are saying, look, to protect child labour, we have to change it and have a uniform act. Likewise, you may have a different definition for transport workers or bidi and cigar workers, that they may have a different category of who is a child. So, the demand by people is that people between 14 and 18, all of them should be included within the category child. I am giving this example just to convey to it that when we discuss amongst ourselves, we feel that obviously a child is a child, a girl child is a girl child. Why should we have definitional debates about it? But as I showed you, there are different laws having different understanding, because it will also imply economic questions of wages, rights, various kinds of health facilities, etc. I now change my focus a little bit. First, I talked about definitional question, and now I'm asking, okay, we know that the UN had specially celebrated the girl child, but the question that arises is why girl child? Why not boy child? Why not all girls and only the girl child? Is there something specifically vulnerable about the girl child? Is she more at risk than the boy child? Which kind of girl child is more at risk? Is the middle class girl child at the same risk as the working class girl child? Is the urban girl child the same as the rural girl child, the Adivasi girl child as compared to the educated metropolitan girl child? These kind of questions are very important to understand the social or the sociological reasons why there has been so much policy emphasis on the girl child and why a particular day in the year has been identified to discuss the issues which face the girl child. To understand the vulnerabilities or the risks that a girl child has in society, we have to understand where is she located within the social structure, within the arrangement in society. What is her status in this social structure? What are her rights? Are all girl children equally at risks? What kind of risks are there? Why do girl children drop out of school more than boy children? Why is the sex ratio skewed? Why is there female feticide and not male deliberate abortion of male fetuses? These questions raise us to the fundamental understanding that the girl child is located very differently in society as compared to other children. What is the social structure which we are talking about? Social structure means the way a society is organized. For example, you have various stratas, classes, castes, ethnic, gender inequalities. So each individual is not positioned same way as the other individuals. I am a middle class, educated, retired academic, and I have therefore certain privileges. But supposing I was not educated, supposing I did not have a job, supposing I did not get any kind of retirement benefits, then I would be, in a certain sense, at a marginal location within society. So different people are located differently in society depending on gender, class, caste, ethnic, tribal identities. But within those inequalities, the girl child is particularly vulnerable. Her location is even more at a disadvantage than others. For example, we have the social structure. I'll give you a small example which we'll talk about even later. That in our society, we know there is a whole bias towards boy babies, that male child, that when a baby is born, everybody will ask whether there's a girl or there is a boy. So there is a dominant ideas in society which also privilege the male child as against the female child. That everybody feels the status of the parents, the family will go up if there is a boy child. Why? The question that we are raising when we are discussing the girl child and social structure is the fact that the girl child is located differently. Why is there more emphasis on the boy child? To understand that, we have to open up not just the ideas which exist in society, but also the structural issues. For example, we use the term in sociology, patriarchal social structure. What is a patriarchal social structure or a male dominant social structure? A patriarchal society is one where men occupy privileged positions both within the private and within the public sphere. Women are subordinate to them. In a natural common sense way, we can say, like in our families, in our middle class families, you would expect that there would be a certain kind of privilege given to men. They would be seen as bread winners, people who earn money, and so the respect accorded to them would be more. You would be serving them, whether it's food or drink or their well-being, etc. Whereas a woman who may be working may not be privileged, she may be working outside, but when she comes home, she is expected to serve the others. So there is a certain structure both within the private sphere as well as in the public sphere. And in this, the dominance of men are obviously much more. So first is patriarchy, which is overall dominance of men. The second is patrilineal. What do we mean by patrilineal? It refers to the organization of family relationships in society by line of descent. This may sound complicated, it's not complicated at all. It means that the property and the name of the family goes from father to son to grandson. So when you have a patrilineal line of descent, the idea is that the family name or family property or everything else belonging to the family goes from father to son and so on. And the girl in the same family, when she gets married, she goes into the gotra or the lineage of her in-laws. So patrilineal, line of descent from father to son to grandson. If you understand patrilineal, you will understand why there is so much focus on the boy child. Because the idea would be the girl child really does not belong to the family. She is just a mehman or a guest for a short while. Now, I use the term patriarchy for overall control by men. Then I use the word patrilineal, which means line of descent from father to son and so on. Now I introduce a third word called patrilocality. When a culture defines relationships and identities in terms of male ancestors, patrilocality means that when you get married, say when a young girl gets married, she goes and lives in the residence of her husband and her in-laws. Patrilocal, the residence is patrilocal in patrilineal culture. Those of us who belong to a patriarchal, patrilineal, patrilocal society, we think this is natural. It is natural to get married as women, have vidai and move in to the residence of your in-laws or your husband's family. But in our societies, studies have shown that there are matrilineal societies where the line of descent is from mother to daughter and so on. And in such societies, you may continue to live in your mother's house rather than move out. However, the structures of patriarchy, patrilineality and patrilocality means that there is overall dominance and a privileging of the boy child as compared to the girl child. And we have hundreds of idioms in Hindi and in other Indian languages, or proverbs, or what we call in Hindi kahawats, which tell you that the status of the girl child is very different from the status of the boy child. You may have heard the word paraya dhan, that she belongs to someone else. She will go away, kuch dino ka mehman. She is a guest here, she will go away. She really does not belong here. Or that once she is married, the only time she should leave her marital house is when she is no longer alive or when she is dying or dead, So you have many idioms or ideas in society which reinforce or continue to, reproduce the ideas of the vulnerability and unequal status of the girl child. So when the UN or when the states of different countries, whether it's India or whether it's Australia, celebrate the International Day of the Girl Child, there are sociological reasons for that. Reasons which shows that the girl child is more at risk and disadvantage compared to the boy child, which is not to say that boy childs themselves may not be vulnerable to many other kinds of exploitation and risk. Idioms always reflect, like I gave, proverbs or what we say kahawat or muhavra, reflect the gendered nature of social structure. The society is gendered. What does that mean? It means that society impacts different genders differently. Two examples I'm giving which are very common in our everyday conversation. Daughters are guests for a few days. Daughters are a burden. So there is a sense of dread, fear, responsibility. The father of a daughter is somebody who's always burdened with the idea कि इनका शादी कराना है. We have to be careful about her security. We should make sure that there is no badnaam, there are no gossip about her. We have to protect her, and the only way to protect her is to control her. कि ज़्यादा बाहर जाना नहीं चाहिए, etc. So you have a conglomeration, or what we say, ideas, cultural practices, norms, all of them in a society also reaffirm the basic social structure which is patrilineal, patrilocal and patriarchal. I want to sort of now give certain examples to show to you actual historical events which will tell you what the status of the girl child in our societies were. Now it is 2022, we are well into the first quarter of the 21st century, but even in the 19th century there was great awareness about the disadvantages that the girl child faced. And the most evident example is the story of the child widow. You see any old films, you read any old novels, you will hear about the child widowhood. That she's a little girl, maybe 8 years, maybe 9 years, she loses her husband, they shave off her head, they make her wear white clothes, she cannot wear any kind of ornaments, and she has to live a life of great penance, eat barely, not indulge in any kind of pleasure, and she would be seen also as something which is a bad omen. So when there's a wedding or celebration in the family, she would be ostracized, kept away, कि उनका छाया भी नहीं आना चाहिए, because she would bring bad omen. You can look at any old story from the 19th century and you will find the story of the child widow. The child widow is the story of the girl child. However, there is another interesting point when we discuss about the girl child. Were all girl children treated similarly? Was the status of all widows who were children similar? And data, 1901 census for instance, notices that that was not the story. It was unequally practiced in our society. So when we had a particular kind of compulsion to have little girls married, it would be higher among the so-called upper castes. Whereas probably the age of marriage was not quite the same among the more marginalized castes and communities. Idea of purity and sexual control was higher among the upper castes. For example, in 1902 census observes, the higher the caste social position, the lower is the age of betrothal and marriage. Why? The question that sociologists and social scientists ask is not just that something happens, but we must know why does it happen. It happened because there was this great fear that if the girl, there was also certain kind of religious beliefs, that if the girl reached puberty or menstruated and was still not married, that would bring ill omen to the father. It was in a certain sense a sin. And to get the young girls married before puberty would be seen as punya, as something which is good. So if you read on the 19th century reform movement, among the more privileged castes, you will see that this is very, very common. Very common that you would have a large number of children, getting married very early, becoming widows very early, and also terrible stories about having a kind of forced sexual assault by the husband on these little girls. In fact, there was an instance in the 19th century where there was a huge debate by social reformers and law when a young girl died of bleeding after such an incident. So it's very important, therefore, to reflect on what this tells us about gender, caste, labor on one hand, and ideas about purity, sexual control, and patriarchy. All of this bear upon the vulnerability and the risk of the child. So if I very quickly reflect on what I've said, it's not enough to celebrate International Child's Day, Girl Child's Day, but also understand why she is more vulnerable to risk than others, children of her age. Thank you very much.